They don't understand me, Hector thought glumly as he slunk off his bedroom to grab his athletic bag and running shoes. They don't even bother to try. He eyed the camera sticking out of its bag, then reached for it and picked it up, feeling the smooth button that triggered it to snap pictures. "Hurry up," Phil called, making Hector almost drop the camera. He started to leave the camera on his desk, scooping up his athletic bag instead, but then he hesitated. Maybe I could sneak off and snap some pictures during training. That thought cheered him up slightly. He snuck the camera into his sports bag, carefully tucking it inside a towel. As he headed for the door, he caught sight of his reflection in the mirror. He looked tall and strong, every bit the athlete his family wanted him to be, but inside he felt different. He was a Gomez, though, and that meant time to train. He headed for the door and the rigorous obstacle-filled workout that awaited him at the local town field. In his beat-up cherry-red pickup truck, Phil drove through the center of Mount Olympus, a quaint town square filled with local shops and governed by that one spotlight. "Welcome to Mount Olympus, home of the Mount Olympus Spartan Run," read the cheerful sign leading into town. Hector gringed at that reminder of his future. It wasn't just that he had to get through the race in 2 weeks. If he did well, he knew that he wouldn't be the end of it. His parents would want him to keep training in the hopes of getting a track scholarship to college, just like Phil was doing. The more successful he was in these races, the more hopes he would be pinned on his promising athletic career. It was like a double-edged sword. If he failed, he would let his whole family down. But if he succeeded, if he won the race and captured the Zeus Cup, then the pressure would never stop. But what choice did he have? Oblivious to Hector's anguish, Phil cranked up the radio, bobbing his head to the upbeat rock song. Hector glanced at him. Phil looked like an older version of Hector. He still had a boyish face, but he was taller, with long, awkward limbs and a curly mop of hair that was shaved close on the sides. It seemed to be all the rage these days on social media, but Hector just thought it looked silly. "Your haircut makes you look ridiculous," Hector blurted out with a giggle. You look kind of like a celery stalk, tall and narrow with curly leaves on top." "Hey, dude, I look super rad," Phil shot back, running his hands through his hair and primping in the rearview mirror. Hector snorted out another laugh at his brother's antics. "Yeah, like a rad celery stalk," he quipped. "Not sure vegetables are ever cool, though." Phil winked at his reflection. "Whatever, you're just jealous of my sick style." Hector cracked a smile, then turned his gaze back to the window, watching the storefronts flash by as he and Phil drove through the familiar downtown. Mount Olympus often felt like a piece of history, perfectly preserved and untouched by modern conveniences and the passage of time, almost like a relic of some ancient era that had long since passed into memory, like out of their history lessons. While that made it a safe place to grow up, it also meant little ever happened there. Safe meant boring, at least in Hector's opinion. The race was the town's one claim to fame, and the source of all the excitement around these parts. "'Cause it's not like there's something else to get excited about," Hector thought glumly. They didn't have a major sports team or even a concert venue. You had to drive 2 towns over to see the newest movie releases at the multiplex, and even farther for concerts. Mount Olympus had the Spartan race, and that was it. The thought made Hector's smile fade, and he couldn't help thinking about the grueling torture session Phil had planned for him at the field. He sometimes hated how he could go from fine to annoyed or sad like someone had flipped a switch. His mom said he was moody, and his moodiness had seemed to intensify when he turned 12. He assumed it was because he was a tween now, and it came with the territory. But Hector knew it was something else. It was the race, and the fact that turning 12 meant this was his year to qualify. It was too much pressure, but he couldn't tell them that. His eyes landed on their family store. They had the prime spot in the center of town. Heroes Sporting Goods, official sporting goods supplier of the Mount Olympus Spartan Run since 1917, read the sign printed on the red awning. The business had belonged to his mom's side of the family, but when she married his father, they'd taken over the day-to-day running of the place. They carried everything anyone could ever want in sports merchandise. The only thing missing from the store was the Zeus Cup. Through the large storefront windows, which were always glistening and spotless, Hector had scrubbed them many times under his mom's careful watch. He saw the empty glass trophy case, promptly placed front and center. This is where the Zeus Cup was supposed to be displayed. His grandparents had it built years ago, hoping someone in their family would one day bring the cup home. Unfortunately, it had remained empty ever since. Hector knew that winning the cup and displaying it proudly in the front window would bring glory to the family and bump up business for their store, too. He felt the added pressure building inside him like a valve that needed to be released. He did want to win it, not for himself but for his family. They loved him and took care of him, putting a roof over his head and food on his table. But he didn't feel worthy. Inside, he felt weak and afraid. Mom stepped outside to sweep the front steps as they drove past. She waved at them, grinning at Hector. "Good luck training," she called out in her sing-song voice. Her long, dark braids swung around her neck. "Break a leg. Or actually, don't break it. But you know what I mean," she said with a wink. Her eyes still sparkled with a youthful energy despite her age. "Thanks, Mom," Hector shouted back through the window. He sat back again and tried to focus on the positives. Like last night, Juan and Luca had slipped him candy bars after dinner, breaking their parents' no candy during the week rule, because they knew he would be famished from practicing so hard. Apparently, they'd snuck into the pantry and swiped them from the top shelf, where Dad hid his stash, unbeknownst to Mom, who was always on him to eat healthier. Dad had a serious sweet tooth. Their truck curved around the central town square, which had large marble statues of famous Greek gods. The town's founders had been big on celebrating their history and culture. Under the leafy trees and scattered among the benches where people lounged and snacked and played with their kids stood the statues. Zeus, Hera, the Fates, the Muses, Pegasus, Hercules, and of course, Hades in the middle of it all. He was the god of the underworld. Hector shuddered, picturing the god who ruled over the souls doomed to the river Styx. He'd loved their father's lesson on Greek mythology, partially because it related to their town. He knew the names of all the gods by heart and what they controlled. The Hades statue stood a little bit taller than the others, and he looked creepier too. It was befitting his role. Hector's eyes locked onto the statue of Hades. The god had spiky, needle-like teeth and a wicked grin, and wore long robes. Flames took the place of his hair, curling upward into a peak. Suddenly, for a split second, the hair flashed with blue flames. The statue's eyes lit up yellow and locked onto Hector. They bored into him. Hector flinched in shock and grabbed his brother's arm. Phil jerked the steering wheel in surprise, and before Hector could blink, with a deafening squeal of the tires, the car veered to the side of the road.